Hey y'all, so I am going to do the Schitt's Creek book tag. So the first prompt is Johnny Rose, an uplifting book with a good message. And it's kind of funny when I saw this and I really tried to think about my answer. I don't read hardly any uplifting books. I usually tend to read pretty dark and somber books. But then I remembered The Deep, which does kind of have it has a darkness to it, just based, on the lore and what these people went through in the past. But the message of love and community was very strong in the end. And yeah, I feel like this was a good option. This was one of the most uplifting books that I've read in a long time. So, The Deep by River Solomon. 2, Moira Rose, an over-the-top character that you just can't help but love. And my first thought was Dandelion from The Witcher. He's pretty over the top, but he's also very funny and comical. But then I also thought of Peeves from Harry Potter as well. They're both very over the top, but they also bring in some comic relief to the books, and I just enjoy both of them so much. 3, David Rose, a book that represents your aesthetic. This was a little tough. I actually had to ask my husband and daughter, but they both came up with The Girl Who Stopped Swimming by Joshilyn Jackson. This is a book where I relate to several of the characters, some of the ways that the characters react and think, their situations. I feel like I'm not embodied by any one character, but there's so many pieces of myself just littered throughout this book that this was a great, once they settled on this one, I knew that it was a good choice. 4, Alexis Rose, the best character growth or arc. And I guess both of my options came from Mistborn Era 1, so I would say Tensoon or Sazed. I love both of their character arcs. Very well done. I go into length about them in my reviews and other stuff, so I don't want to go into too many details for spoilers, but they're great characters. Number 5 is Stevie Budd, a favorite ride or die friendship or group. So that would come from Watership Down, which is kind of a weird answer, but all of the rabbits in this book, they go on this extreme adventure and they take care of each other. They're close with each other. They know that each other has flaws, but they will absolutely do anything for anyone in the group, and it really shows. And it was just such a beautiful story. Number 6, Ted Mullins, a favorite book with an animal on the cover. And to avoid saying Watership Down again, because I absolutely would, I guess I'll go with Pet Sematary. This isn't a feel-good story like Watership Down is, but this book means a lot to me as well, and changed my way of thinking about a lot of things that I've struggled with for my entire life, basically. Number 7, Patrick Brewer, the ideal love interest. When I was thinking about this one, I kind of realized that I don't have a lot of books that have a love interest. I just don't read a lot of them, so I guess I'll go with Elend from Mistborn Era. He lets Vin be herself. He doesn't try to change her. He tries to protect her and help her the best he can, and just lets her do her own thing and be who she is. And I feel like he's a pretty good choice. Number 8 is Community Service, which is a book that you read for a buddy read or a group, book club group or school that you thought you wouldn't like, but you ended up loving. And for me, that is My Sunshine Away by M.O. Walsh. I read it with as a buddy read with a friend of mine several years ago at this point, and it's just a contemporary novel. It has deckled pages, which I hate, but I didn't think that it just didn't seem that interesting, but that was the book that she wanted to read that month, so I told her that I'd read it with her, and it was actually very surprising. It's hard to explain, but it's about, the book is written from the wrong point of view, in my opinion, but that's what makes the book great. And then you get this realization just completely nonchalantly at the end of the book, and it just kind of it's like a gut punch. And it was the first time that I'd ever really felt that gut punch feeling in a while. So I was really impressed with this one. It's very good. Number 9 is Ew, David, which is a book that you DNF'd because the content was too much for you. I kind of took this a bit of a different direction. I don't know if the original prompt is kind of meaning like it's too disgusting or just too over the top, but for me, I DNF'd A Discovery of Witches. I don't have the desk jacket, but It's a Discovery of Witches. I DNF'd this book because it was too much like Twilight. I read Twilight years ago just to see what the hype was about, and I didn't like it. This book gave me those vibes because we spend pages talking about the vampire's ability to taste every single ingredient in a meal that she cooked and every single ingredient in the wine that they were drinking. And I just don't care. I don't care. It was too much. It was just too much of the YA romance that I found a lot in, and I'm not bashing YA by any means, but several of the YA books that I had read recently all had the same thing, like where the love interest is just over the top, perfect at everything. The girl is, you know, humdrum and bland, and why would he ever love me or whatever. And this isn't a YA novel, but that just had I didn't care. Like, why am I spending 10 pages over the course of 2 dates talking about how he can taste every single ingredient in whatever meal you decided to cook for him? Too much extraneous details that mean nothing to the story. He's a vampire. We get it. I don't need to spend 10 pages going over it, and so I DNF'd it. Sorry. 10 is Love That Journey for me, which is the best series ender or overall series arc. So I'll go with Mistborn again. I know I keep coming back to it, but I just love the way that Hero of Ages wrapped up everything. It just done an excellent job of wrapping up so many things that I didn't even think needed to be wrapped up, but obviously they did, and it was great. Number 11 is Eat Glass, a book or author that you broke up with. And the first thing that comes to mind for this one is Dean Koontz. Several years ago, I read 8 books by him back to back, and I learned something about myself, and that is I shouldn't read the same author back to back because I will end up hating that author. Dean Koontz was one of those authors, and I have no experience of his writings for the past 10 years, so take this with a grain of salt. If you enjoy his work, that is great for you. His plots always sounded so interesting. He had great ideas, unique plot twists. And so I read several books of his in a row because I liked the plots, but his writing style, by the end of that 8th book, or not even the end of the 8th book, I quit in the middle of the 8th book. But by the time I hit that point in that 8th book where I just quit, I just hated his writing style with a passion. I know I've talked to a few people here recently about why I don't like Dean Koontz. So I'll just go ahead and repeat that little story for you. The 8th book, I can't even remember what it was called, but I literally stopped reading it in the middle and just never even looked at it again. Never picked it up, never read another Dean Koontz book, and I never will. Dean Koontz has a habit of having so many metaphors and similes in his writing, and then he explains them like you're dumb. So the sentence was, he tackled him like they were in a barroom brawl, but they weren't in a bar, they were on another planet. And after I read that sentence, I was done. Because you know what? I knew that they weren't in a bar. I knew they were on another planet because I had been reading the book. I've been reading the book. I know that we're not suddenly in a bar just because you say he tackled him like they were in a barroom brawl. I know they're still on another planet. I know they didn't leave that planet in the space of one sentence. It was just too much. It was too much for me. I had already, at this point, for like 2 or 3 books, had already started getting really annoyed with his writing for similar things. Like there was another example of a person saying, "That's funny, not funny, haha, funny weird." I know that when you say that's funny, that you don't mean funny haha, you mean funny weird, because I am reading the book and I know what type of conversation this character is having. I don't need you to explain that you mean weird when you say funny and not legitimately haha funny. I don't need you to explain that to me. It's another reason why I quit reading the series of unfortunate events. I don't need you to define words for me or how you're using them. That just don't need your help. So Dean Koontz, hate him, will never ever read another book by him ever again. Number 12 is very uninterested in that opinion, and it's a popular opinion that you disagree with. And I think I have to go with the fact that I don't like A Game of Thrones. I read the first 3 books back when the third one just came out, and I listened to them on audio, so that was probably my first mistake. The other mistake was that when I was at the library, I was just looking for something new to read. I didn't go there specifically for those books, but when I was talking to the librarian, it was this younger guy, and I told him I was looking for a fantasy novel or series, and he said, oh, this is, a great series. I suggest you read it. Here's the first one, and he gave me A Crown of Kings, or A Crown for Kings, whatever the wording is. Which, if you're a Game of Thrones fans, that's not the first book in the series. So I ended up reading the second book first. And when I was listening to it, I felt so lost, so out of place. It took me forever to kind of fall in with it and figure out who all these people are and their different relationships. By the end of the second book, I feel like I had it. And then when I went to go get the next book in the series, the actual second one, that's when I realized, oh, I read the second one first. Or so then I ended up, at that time, I just went ahead and listened to A Storm of Swords. And that one wasn't that bad, but I was also just not interested in half of the characters. I didn't care about half of them, so that meant that half the book practically I didn't care about. I was bored. It wasn't interesting, and I feel like the only reason why I kept pushing through with A Crown for Kings, the second one, was because it was the first one I was reading and I was just trying to figure out what was going on. But by that time I knew what was going on, and the third one was just, it had nothing for me. It was so boring. And then I went back and read the first one, and I had some problematic issues with some of George R.R. Martin's writing. And that has to do with, I don't want to go into too many details because I know hardly anyone agrees with me, and I had a whole conversation about this with Asfanyar, and which I'll link his channel down below, and he brought up some really good points, and he loves this series, and but for me it didn't work, and I can see why a lot of people would like this book or this series, but I just have so many problems with his writing. I don't mind sexism in books, especially when, that's part of your world, and that's kind of what you want to write about, where it's more of like a medieval era where sexism was definitely an issue. That doesn't bother me, but I don't like that George R.R. Martin would choose to focus on things like rape of a 12-year-old for several pages, and then just spend a couple of paragraphs on the death of a semi-important character at the time. It was just so imbalanced for me. It just made me uncomfortable. I feel like he focused a lot on the sexual abuse aspects, because it happens to several of the characters in the books, and I feel like he focused on it a lot, and I don't know, it was a lot of detail, where in other parts of the book where I feel like it also needed a lot of detail, it didn't. So I just don't understand why he would go into that much detail for something like that, but then in other things that are also very important to the book, he just kind of glossed over. It just made me uneasy, and I didn't really like it, and I know that's a completely personal opinion. I watched the show. I figured, maybe it'll be a bit easier. And it was, but of course I didn't like the ending. Who liked that last season? Let's be real here. So the show was a bit easier for me to get into. So, and I know that there's a lot of differences in the book and the show, but by now, since I've already watched the show, I'm not going to go back and try to reread his works. Even though I feel like I might be more able to look around and overlook that problem that I have with his writing. But yeah, that on top of the boredom that I felt after finishing the third one, I had no desire to go on to the fourth, A Feast for Crows. So it is what it is, and I'm sorry for all you fans out there. It's just not for me. Anyway, that was the last prompt for the Schitt's Creek book tag. Like I said, if you are interested in doing this book tag, absolutely go ahead and go for it. I would love to see your answers. If you want to just give me some answers down below, or give me your opinions about any of the books, or your opinion about Game of Thrones, I'd love to hear it. Promise we'll have a good discussion about it. Go ahead and leave me a comment down below, and y'all take care. Bye.